Morning.
Morning.
Do you hear my voice clear?
Morning. Lại nè, mà mình Ronaldo lại chụp tắt báo này.
Chụp.
Lại.
Yes, guy. Avatar.
Avatar. One more participant. Okay, good morning everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are everyone right now. Okay, good morning everyone. So by the way, today we have the presentation from Mr. Phanith. And by the way, yes, during the weekend we have a technical week presentation. I would like to present that to everyone new. Okay, so we have the presentation from our member during the weekend, and yes, they share many interesting topics, the latest technology, something else. Okay, so let's enjoy. Mr. Phanith, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Sky. And good morning, everyone. And so this week, I'm going to introduce about Docker. So let me share my presentation. Everyone see my slideshow, right?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay, let me start. So I want to introduce about the Docker. So we have take a look at the Docker definition. And Docker is an open platform for developing, shipping, and running application by using container. We usually call Docker containers. And the good point is inside the container, we can make application with all requirement, configuration, and the library and dependency to deploy as a single application. So the Docker architecture is a client and server. We have server is a Docker daemon, and we have client is a Docker CLI that we can run command line to control the Docker. And for Docker, to run the Docker, we need a Docker image. So the Docker image, usually we can build it on our local machine, or we can pull it from the registry where we can store the Docker image. And yes, and we can take a look at a lot of the Docker commands for managing the application with the Docker. And the Docker object we interest in a Docker image. It's a template for creating a Docker container. And the Docker container is running instead of an image. And when we need to run the application, we need a network, Docker network, and we need a Docker loop for processing data for our application. And why Docker is made? You may see this picture. For developer, is sometimes we meet this problem. As we can develop in our machine, but it did not work in other people machine. Yes, and the first point is environment isolation. We can install Docker in our machine, and we can create a different environment for testing, for development, and for production. In a separate environment in the same local machine. Yes, and the second point is Docker is independent application. We need support many platforms for Linux, for Mac, for Windows, for clouds, and even for mobiles, it's AOM architecture. Yes, and the third point is Docker has rapid development and deployment. Support for CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous development workflow. Yes, and the third point is scalability and feasibility made easy. It's easy to scale Docker with a command. You can run the command, and Docker is even more secure right now. And you can ship it anytime, anywhere. So you can one container can run in on another platform that have Docker installed. And the last point is dependency management. That's the first definition. We made dependency inside the same package. And Docker, we can Docker registry is where we host the image, Docker image. We can have Docker Hub provide a public registry, and Red Hat also have Red Hat Quay. VMware also have Abo, and also some clouds have their private registry. Yes, and I also provide a Docker installation manual with the link below. We can use a Docker command and Docker compose to build the application. And we will take a look at a Docker file. It's a text file containing command used to or command line to assemble image. We need Docker file to build a Docker image. And I give a sample of a Docker build to build just a simple image. And we also take a look at the Docker compose file. It's a YAML file containing a service, defining service network for the application. And to start up the Docker application, we use Docker compose app. Yes, and that's all for this distribution. And I'm going to show a short demo of Docker compose. Everyone see my terminal, right? No.
No.
Not.
Yeah, we still see your presentation.
I think it's on the same screen.
You can press share screen again and switch your desktop. Switch your screen.
Okay. Yes, this terminal screen.
Yes, we see your
Yeah.
terminal.
Okay, thank you. And this terminal I set up in backend, install Docker and Docker compose command. And I take a look at the sample file. This is the Docker compose file. Just two lines of command. First, we take pull Python image, Python version 3. Then to try to build the image from this command. The first we set up environment for building, checking working directory inside our container, copy the requirement file or installing it's the Django application. Yes, and you copy all the code. It's just a simple Docker compose file for building a Docker image. So yes, this one is the image file. So let us, and we will take a look at the Docker compose YAML. This YAML file is the sample. We create two service. We define YAML with the version and define two service database. We're using PostgreSQL and define there are a lot of definition in from Docker. We can take a look later. Yes, and we define the value to store Postgres data and the environment variable or log into our PostgreSQL database, and define a service for the Django web framework. We know run this to run the Django application. Yes, and inside the container for web application, we port mapping port default mapping port in container with the host with the same port, and also the same environment for connecting to our database. Yes, let me run this simple application. We run Docker compose up to, because the application already built. Already, I see the build command is used for build if the image is not exist, but I already run this one, so the application is already running, already built for this image, and we can connect to this host. So it's in inside my VM in background. To connect to my visual machine, connect to IP. Yes, it's coming in terminal. Yes, that's all for this simple demo. Yes, and that's all for this demo. Do you have any comment, any question, or any discussion we can talk, we can discuss together?
I have one question.
Yes.
I have one question. What is the difference between the Docker file and Docker compose.yaml file?
Yes, Docker compose file is for building image, building the image for Docker, where Docker compose file, YAML file, Docker file, and Docker compose is for building a service, define a service for running the application.
Mm-hmm.
So
oh,
yes, どうぞよろしくお願いします。
oh, okay. Then my turn. So my question is, do you use Docker in your daily work? If you use it, I want to know for what you use it.
I usually when I want to test application, like there are some application we can run from Docker, so we can run from Docker without installing on our machine. So it take less memory. So when we want to use the application, we just start the container. Yes, and if I want to learn some programming, like some stuff for network or anything that related, we can use the Docker container image.
I see. Thank you. Yes, that's great. Yeah, Docker, as you said, Docker use very less memory, CPU than virtual machine. And yeah, if we need only one process, then we can just use Docker command, then Docker get all necessary things from Docker Hub or registry, or sometimes build from Docker file, build image from Docker file. Yes, it's really, I agree with, I agree. It's really great, great to test anything in the local with less CPU resource, memory resource. Thank you, I understand.
Yes, thank you for your comment.
I would like to have two questions to Mr. Phanith. Okay, so first one is that can Docker perform the role in the application? For example, some application we use Apache. Just example. So if we use Docker, so can we just only use Docker instead of Apache?
Sorry again.
Okay.
Apache.
Okay. So Apache is the web server. So
You mean Apache?
I so sorry. Yeah. Okay. So can we use Docker only without using Apache if we have one application?
Without Apache. Usually, if we need a web server, we can use image from web for web application like Nginx, Docker, Apache, Docker. If our application require a web server, is yes, it depends on our requirements.
So Docker, it is not a web server.
Docker is just a container that you can put any application code that we want to run. If you want Nginx web server, you can pull a Docker image from Nginx and add in your application code. Then we can run the application. Here, just in case if you don't want to install Nginx or Apache in your local machine, sometimes you want to test the application, then you need to install a lot of stuff on your machine. You waste a lot of memory and disk space. You may mess up your development application machine.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Also, this is my first question, and the second one. So regarding to the script to connect our application to Docker. So what is the requirement file? Docker compose file and Docker and .yaml file. So could you show that what's inside Docker compose file and .yaml file?
Yes. Docker file is be used for building image, and this command is use existing image, the Docker, the Python Docker image version 3. and it follow all the command line to build a new image for our customer image. It just let me change the working directory, then we copy our general application app. Our application go to the Docker. This is Docker PaaS inside the Docker.
Okay, I see. How about it's a Docker? How about Docker compose.yaml?
Yes, YAML file is for defining the service. We need the application to run. We need to define two service, database service, because we separate our application from our database. That's why we have two containers to run the application. We need at least two containers. One for running application web, our code, and another for database container. It's two separate containers.
So for
Yes.
So for example, if a application have no database, so can we skip the database services?
Yes, sure, absolutely. We can use only for web application. We can leave our application do not require a database. Just name one service, or we just can run a Docker command. Run. We can use Docker run, but Docker run, if you want to run two containers, three containers, it's mess up. So it's better to run a Docker compose that pull multiple container for our application.
Okay, great. That's all from me. Thanks for the answer.
Yes, thanks for your question too.
Hello, I have a question. As you said why we use Docker, as you list down there as 7 point as the reasonable that use the Docker, and I just want to know about the number files. You said it's be more the secure for the Docker. Can you tell us what are the secure for the Docker? Yes.
Yes. By now, the Docker was be used in production, like used in Kubernetes cluster for controlling the Docker, and Docker they have their mechanism. We can run the user and the normal user instead of root, because the root user is more privilege. Yes, the Docker. We have now try to make a Docker more safe. They have defined default configuration, and also build the secure image for public use. Yes, and I see it's in production, so it's even more secure than the first time it was started. You can learn more about to secure the Docker.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your answer.
I have one question.
Yes.
So, can I build an application and I deploy the Docker? Okay. I want to deploy
Again, please.
I want to deploy my application to Amazon Cloud. So, can I deploy my Docker to Amazon?
Yes, for AWS, they also have a service for Docker. Yeah, you can have Amazon registry, Docker registry, and also support many cloud platforms support Docker and even Kubernetes.
Do Amazon support Docker?
Yes.
Have its own image?
Yes, all, I think most popular cloud right now support Docker, even VMware.
Thank you.
Any more comment or discussion?
Just the one question. Yes, normally, when we install the Docker, yes, before the I mean the environment of Docker is we have the hardware, and then we have the OS. Then we install the Docker engine, and we build the container. Just build the image, and we make the container. My question: how we prevent to make sure that the container, sorry, to make sure that our service is running all the time. I mean the risk if the hardware have the issue or the OS have the issue, so our containers that running on that physical server, it will be down. So how we prevent it? Normally something we had a one physical server, and then we install the one OS, and we had the many container running on that physical servers. So if one time had the issue with the OS or had issue with the physical server, it down, so all the container are running will also down. So how we prevent to make sure our container are running? Yes, even we down the physical server, we can make the something load balancing or cluster or something, and
Yeah, I understand. Before make the Docker application for high availability, like we usually using Docker container orchestration tool, because like we have in the cluster, usually when we want to make application available for most of the time, we usually use it in a cluster. We build a cluster for running application as because in the cluster, the application can move within the cluster. So we are not sure which machine is going to down. So usually we have one tool for container orchestration tool that can manage the Docker application. We can use Docker Swarm for managing or using a Kubernetes or any other advanced Docker tool for managing high availability of our application. That's most as enterprise application, we need a cluster for protecting application to run 24-hour over. That's answer your question.
okay, thank you. That's all from me.
So I have one more question.
Yes.
If I want to create a one web server, so access from outside. So should I use Docker or should I use VM?
Again, please. Last, I cannot hear the last couple.
If I want to have a web server and I want to access from outside, so should I use a Docker or should I use VM?
Docker or access from outside. The Docker using its own private network. So the container need to run on a server that has a public IP, and you need to forward from a public to a private, because inside the container is own a private network. It's build another network for us as for our separate environment isolation. It's depend on you need to use application in the VM or in the Docker container.
So what is the benefit between VM and Docker? Docker is better than VM or VM better than Docker?
In terms of the VM and Docker, in terms of memory, system performance, the VM will take more power, more performance from the from the machine, while Docker is lightweight, less CPU, less memory than our VM.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, it's
say something. Say something. Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Back to I want to say something back to Bonlok-san about should we use the Docker for public or we use the VM? Which one is better? I think it depends on the situation. If we talk about if we think about the high available, we may need some tool to manage the multiple container inside the cluster. And if we talk about the VM, I think we let's say that if we need some tool to manage the Docker cluster, I think it's good, but it may be require high spec server for managing. And for VM, it's also a good point that if we just running like simple website and then I think we don't have budget for build a Kubernetes cluster or the swarm, so we should use a native. So that's all my idea.
Oh, here is you will use Kubernetes beside. So
I think that like I don't know about the Docker swarm, but about the Kubernetes, we may need the high spec server to build it.
Yes.
If we talk about a cluster, we may need high spec server to build it. But if for now I will require just a simple website that can be have two server for high available, I think just use VM is enough.
So it's better than we use two container, right? Like I just have one database and one database container and one database web application. So I use VM better than I have two container, right?
Just my idea. I think it's depend on your requirement. If you need a lot of traffic, so it's better to stick with a container, so you can scale the container easily. But if the traffic is minimum, and then your capability to support VM, so VM is better to set up and deploy.
Yes, I agree with Phanith. We should know about our requirements first, and then we try to clearly about our requirements. Sometimes we may, if our requirement require Docker better, we use Docker. But if VM is better, we use VM. Depend on our requirement. Just the good point of Docker, I think, before when we want to use the to build application for development environment like PHP, we may need the WAM server or XAMPP server to install in our local PC, or if we want to build Node.js, we need to install Node.js in our local PC. If we want to build the Python application, we may need to install Django in our local PC, but in Docker, we can do many things inside Docker. That is a good point. Yes, that's all from me.
We have less than a minute. Should we resume? Should we?
Can I have a question to developer team? Do the developer team also use Docker?
Yes, we always use Docker.
Yes, I use
Docker, but sometimes we need to configure Docker just a server or somewhere that we can fully execute and use like a database on the local. Like Docker is just somewhere to execute the code.
I have one question. So regarding to the Docker, mostly it is HTTP. So how to make HTTPS in Docker? Could anyone answer or give any suggestion?
Yes. Yes. Let me answer. Try to answer. If we want a web application, we can use Nginx or Apache, and they also have an option for us to attach the SSL certificates, and we can add SSL certificate and attach to a configuration of the web application, and you can restart the Docker and check if the web application accepts our certificates. It's from my idea.
Sky, are you saying something? We don't hear you now.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Phanith. It is really great. But I could not catch up that the thing you said install Apache.
We can use Docker image for Apache. They have, I think, Apache also have their container image, and they also have some configuration where show us some configuration where we can input some configuration for our application to control from our host, like HTTP config for Apache or Nginx config for Nginx. So we can specify the location where our SSL certificate on our machine using volume matching. Because as we know, the Docker container do not store data. So when the container is down, nothing exists.
I see. I see.
Yeah, we can using attach, I believe, attach a file to a container so it can read the file from our machine.
Oh yes, really great. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So everyone have any feedback, suggestion, or question? And as I joined some event and the Docker, it is great. Yes. By the way, so do you know to Mr. Phanith, do you know any history of Docker? Who is the co-founder? Who is the inventor of Docker? And what Docker start launch after public services?
Oh, that's a long story. I did not
Or-
research all that.
Sky, you can find something on Google or Wikipedia. I think it's more clearly than Phanith.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can
rather
add those to the slide, but it may get along the slide.
I don't know Big Brother got.
Okay, so I finish now. If we have no any question, please move to Yoshida-san.
No, nothing from me. And after this presentation session, I want Bunlong to introduce himself to our members. So we have any more questions or discussion? Nothing?
No.
Same for
Then,
me, yes.
yes, we close it. And Bunlong, so you are the new member in your company. Can you introduce yourself to our members?
Yes. So hello everyone. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Indroduction. I'm from Siem Reap. Yes, I'm living in Phnom Penh. I study at major Soviet engineering in the Indroduction Institute of Technology, and also known as TIT. I just graduated last year in 2021 as a fourth generation. And for me, I do love technology and also the physics. In childhood, I used to um, I want to be a teacher at the physics field, but end up as a IT guy. Basically for the hobby, I love traveling and also bicycling. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And welcome to our company.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yes, then, yeah, nothing more. So we can close the meeting. Sky, let's close it.
Or maybe someone has question to Bunrong.
Oh, good.
Yes, that's really interesting to me, Mr. Bunrong, regarding to your major. It's a software engineer. By the way, in Cambodia, that kind of major is really rare. If we go to the college or university, we cannot find that major easily. And so, regarding to software engineer, like what is really special and what make you interested in that kind of thing, software engineer? Because as myself, I study in IT, and that time I am really difficult to find that major too. So is there any what make you interested in software engineer?
Yes, well, basically, to be honest, at the time that I graduated,
finish a grade 12. I have no idea major what I'm going to do next, because as a physics teacher, I cannot go and study at the field at the time. So I have to find another field. So I have no idea of a software engineers, and have a call from the admin from the. So I just apply and study that major. So to be honest, I just want to study IT, but end up with a software engineer. Yes.
So it's accident.
Yes, all the time. Accident.
Are you strong at mathematics?
Oh no.
I heard that software engineer need a strong mathematics.
No, so
I think maybe we only ask Bundong 2 more questions, or we will ask him forever and it's not finished.
Okay, thank you so much for everyone joining to our weekly meeting today. And today I graduate also, as you see. So yes, thank you so much. Bye everyone. Have a nice day.
Yes, bye.
Nice weekend.